Now back to one of our top stories of the day, where the Umkhonto weSizwe party says it will appeal the ruling interdicting impeached Judge John Hlophe's participation in the Judicial Service Commission. Now this is after the Western Cape High Court ruled in favor of the Democratic Alliance's urgent application earlier today. For more reaction on the story, I am joined by Umkhonto weSizwe party spokesperson Nhlamulo Ndlela. Nhlamulo, thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Good evening.
And you've seen, of course, the Democratic Alliance who brought this case, as well as a civil society organization. They have welcomed this. Also, COSATU has welcomed this ruling too. But in your statement, you've called it a horror judgment. You've described it as incompetent, irrational, absurd, and blatantly political. Take us through that.
Well, there's nothing more to say besides all the adjectives that you used. The reality is this is a political judgment, blatantly so. Even if you look at the fact that the Judicial Service Commission, as per Section 178, is set up merely for the purpose of identifying judges who are fit and proper. Now, who better suited than Dr. Hlophe to represent our constituency, South Africans, in identifying through 25, 28 years of experience. He's got a doctorate, and he's been a judge, in terms of whether a person is fit and proper or not. So with regards to his competence, you can't question that. The issue of which they're trying to use morality, I mean, the DA are the last people to speak about morality. The DA today have people, and what they actually represent is racism, and they're from the back of murders. They murdered our people. These are people that represent, individuals and thugs and thieves who came here as visitors and killed our people. That's who the DA is, and they're in government today. And they want to speak about morality. They have members who are racist, who sit in committees, the likes of Ian Cameron. Those people are racist. They are racist. But yet, we want to speak about them having morals, and they want to point fingers at other people having morals. Well, I'm sorry. Unfortunately, that will not fly. The reality is this judicial system is captured. If you look at Bakwa himself, look at the string of cases and the case that he has presided over, the issue of the rogue unit. I mean, his finding was that there's no rogue unit, Pravin's rogue unit. But all the facts were there. Tom Moyane and the Hawks at the time in the NPA presented a case that was clear, that indeed there is a rogue unit. So that's just the reality of what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with a captured judicial system. Every single time when either Umkhonto weSizwe or anything that goes against the Cyril Ramaphosa ANC or this government, it's always going to be questioned. The same thing as what happened with regards to the Section 47(1)(e). When we spoke about the issue of separation of powers in terms of National Assembly and President Zuma being part of the National Assembly versus being the candidate on the IEC candidate list. That was also used again. So clearly for MK there's Zuma laws and there's Hlophe laws.
Let's remove the DA from this, right? Let's talk about the fact that Dr. John Hlophe has been impeached as a judge. So if he's been found not to be fit to be a judge, how can he then sit and decide who will be a fit judge, irrespective of his experience that you can't take away?
Well, here's the reality. Impeachment is a political process where the ANC of Cyril Ramaphosa colluded with the DA. Even before we knew there was going to be a GNU. Guess what? Subsequently, it is exactly what we thought it was, a GNU. So this is just a coalition of, personal gain, and they're now using the judicial system to settle political scores and political battles. So the issue of impeachment is exactly that. They buried Dr. Hlophe off the back of the impeachment, and they want to do what? Bury him again. Here's what's also the truth. Dr. Hlophe is competent. He is competent enough to serve. There are those that don't even have an iota of a qualification that he has or experience that he has, and yet they sit or are going to be allowed to sit there. There's racists, those that have actually broken the law, and I've mentioned a number of times, Glynis Breitenbach. Who says anything about her for having deleted evidence? And then they set up a commission that says she didn't do any of that.
As the MK
that's nonsense. It's not true.
Yeah. As the MK party, you are going to be appealing this ruling, of course, but also you're saying that the next meeting of the JSC on the 7th of October, that will not take place, and you make sure that it doesn't take place. What do you mean by that, and how will you ensure it doesn't?
Well, we've always protested, and any act of protest has always been within the law, and we encourage our supporters and our members to do that. We have law-abiding citizens, but look at it this way. There's something you need to be aware of here. Look at the timing. This judgment took 3 weeks before they could give us the actual judgment today. So it took them 3 weeks to process it, knowing very well that this is going to happen with next month, right? So, and then they say that, pending a review of how the National Assembly came about, appointing him or allowing him to participate in that. It was a vote. And as a National Assembly member of Parliament, the laws, which are drawn from the Constitution, allow him, and the rules allow him to participate. You can't be restricted as a member of Parliament. So they're overreaching, and it's clear the reason we're saying that this was planned. If you look at the timing, how long and by when will it take us to actually come to a conclusion, whether it's positive or not, or in favor of us or not? If you look at the times at which they're supposed to sit and effectively constitute the JSC in order for them to interview these judges, there's not going to be any time. So you can tell that this was premeditated, was planned, and even the judgment itself is not against Parliament itself. It is against Hlophe. So it's telling.
Kosatu says, and some have also said as well, that, look, Parliament should actually have had better chance to interrogate these nominations, the lists as well given by the different political parties, and not have allowed it in the first place.
No. Here's what's important to note, and I'll repeat it. Parliament draws its powers from the Constitution, the same Constitution that the so-called DA doesn't want us to change. And it's for exactly these reasons that we should change it, because it has eyes. Now, based on that, Parliament is allowed to set up, and when you become a member of Parliament, by the way, you're allowed, and the powers allow you to not be restricted and to participate in any committee that we deploy you as a party to participate in. Even worse, with the Judicial Service Commission, in this case, there was even a vote. People voted. People voted for Dr. Hlophe to be there. People voted. It's also an infringement of the same South Africans that voted for Mkhonto Sizwe's rights. So the 2.4 million, off the back of whatever number that, even if they call it a 2.4 million vote, which we know is questionable, that alone tells you that they're infringing on the South African people's rights. So this judicial system is not for the people. It is not for a democratic South Africa. It doesn't reflect what we're trying to achieve as a country. Why can't a competent person such as Dr. Hlophe, who has presided as a judge for the Western Cape for many years, with 25 years of experience, with a doctorate on top of that, not be a judge that sits and presides over interviews? Remember, the Constitution in this case, even if Dr. Hlophe was to participate and recommend, let's say he participates and he recommends a judge, right? And you find that it's the most competent judge, Cyril Ramaphosa has got the powers as the president of this country given to him by the Constitution to take even the most incompetent and appoint the most incompetent person to be a Chief Justice. So where is the threat? I'll tell you where the threat is. We know that the Western Cape, specifically the DA, they want to control the Western Cape. They want to control the judiciary of the Western Cape. They want to control even the security cluster in the form of police in the Western Cape. So the last thing that they want, that they've won in terms of them signing a statement of provincial level with Mkhunu. We know what's going to happen there. We know that they're wanting to put provisions in there to allow even a civilian to lead in the Western Cape. We know all these things. We're very clear. And we know that they're going to put a racist in there to run police in the Western Cape. That's the first point. Now, all they need to do to complete this strategy of theirs, to have total control of the value chain in the judicial system, is to now get their own judge. Now, if you're going to have a person like Dr. Hlophe, who's going to preside over these interviews, it's going to be glaringly obvious that the person that they want, which I can tell you now is going to be an incompetent person, look at what happened with Batoy, is going to preside over the judicial system as a judge president. So they want total control of the Western Cape. That's why they'll go to every extent. When they saw Judge Hlophe emerging, they realized this is the biggest problem that they've got.
You don't
they need
think
to ensure
it's
they deal with
because
it.
he's been found wanting? You don't think it's because of the morality issue? You don't think it's because he is impeached?
It cannot be about, they're talking about morality. I've told you about morality. They're the last people to speak about morality.
Just before
what we want is we want competent people to interview judges. And the problem is they are so much in control of the judicial system that they don't want it to be interrupted by a person like Dr. Hlophe.
Before I let you go, Nhlamulo, if you do lose the appeal, would you be willing to put somebody else, another candidate from your party?
I'll tell you what. We always have a strategy. And that strategy is one I can tell you now that will ensure we still achieve what we want to achieve.